Hey everybody, welcome back. This is part 2 of the Deeper Than Dieting series. I decided to create this series because I'm a classically trained registered dietitian, and over the many years of working with people, I realized that health information is not enough to create a transformation. A lot of people were feeling blocked or they were feeling stuck, having a lot of resistance, self-sabotage, beating their head against a wall, wondering, why can't I just do it? And so what I realized is that there are so many deeper things inside of us that sometimes create blocks or resistance, and it can affect our confidence in being able to move forward with our health. And so this series is all about going deeper than just nutrition information. I think nutrition information is very valuable, but this is not what this series is about. This would be for you if you're like, what the heck? Why do I know a lot about health and I can't quite seem to do it? Or I just know that there's more that I just haven't discovered within myself. My goal here is to peel back the layers and help you have a greater understanding. And today's focus is all going to be about one of the strongest unseen forces inside of us that drives our behavior, and that's the mind. We're going to focus on what the heck does our mind have to do with influencing our food choices beyond just health information, and how you can work with this tool that's inside of your body that you have instead of letting it pull you around without your conscious awareness of why am I making these food choices. I want to break down, how does your mind work? How do you work with it? What do you do when your mind and your thoughts are driving your behavior without even your awareness of it? So I'm going to break down all about how the mind works, and so that you can feel more confident in getting to know it and how to work with it. And this is one of the steps that I take people through when they're on their path to mastering mindfulness. Part 1 of what I take people through is laying a strong foundation. This is so important, and that was part 1 of the series. If you didn't see part 1, definitely watch that one, because it's going to make the rest of these series so much easier to implement, because laying the foundation is giving you a mindset shift that will help you take on these new ideas, because the diet industry has primed our minds into a way of thinking that causes self-sabotage and keeps us stuck in the same loops. And so if you're using that diet mindset, but you're trying a different method or a different path, it's going to feel like a little bit of resistance and like you're being pulled in 2 different directions. So I always have everyone start with laying the foundation of shifting their mindset, and then seeing, what does the roadmap look like if I want to go to a place of going deeper than dieting and learning about myself, the relationship with myself, the relationship with my food, and really practicing that until it comes to a place of mastery. What does that roadmap look like? Where am I at, and what do I need to do in order to get to the next level? So that's what part 1 is all about. It's going to open up new possibilities. So if you missed that, make sure that you check that out. So today we're going to talk about the mind. That is really the next step in mastering mindfulness. After the mind, we're going to explore the body, why sometimes we can't trust our bodies when it comes to food, or it feels like we're at war with our bodies or feel very disconnected from it. That will be in part 3. Part 4, we're going to talk about our relationship to food. Why do we get food cravings? What is that magnetic pull? How do we learn to work with our food cravings so we can heal our relationship to food? The step after that will be the relationship to our environment. How does everything around us influence our ability to grow and change? And then the last section will be the relationship with yourself or your soul, whichever word that you really resonate with. And that's, how do you design a life that feels true and authentic to you, and that you're choosing health habits that are very fulfilling to you in your heart and your soul, and not something that you just should do, that you're forcing yourself through. We know that that is what creates a long-lasting, healthy lifestyle. So we're going to go through each part of those in this series, and today is all about the mind. So think of your mind as one of your main operating systems. It's one of those master controllers of your behaviors and guiding you to make different decisions. And when you don't have awareness of your mind and your thoughts, it's kind of like pulling you around in different directions. And then you might be wondering, why do I always do that? Why do I do what I do? Or why do I know so much about health, but I'm also doing something different? And we might not really have awareness of why there's like inner friction. And so the mind is like, it stores our memories, it stores beliefs about ourselves, our own identity. It stores information about health, about our goals. So many things are stored in this big thing in our head that is kind of like the operating system directing us and so much of our behaviors. In later series, we're going to talk about how the body also influences our food choices, but the mind is a big one. When you know how to work with your mind and your thoughts, then it's kind of like you're taking back the controls. You're in the driver's seat working with your thoughts and allowing your thoughts to work with you instead of against you. So you're like, okay, I want to regulate my thoughts so that they help me move in this direction. Instead of maybe following the path of the grooves that you already know, which might be not helping you. It could be pushing a rock uphill. And so this is one of the biggest downfalls of the diet industry, is that we're limiting the capability of our mind to just storing nutrition or health information. That's a tiny little piece of what drives why we do what we do. It's so small. So if you wonder, why do I know so much about health but I'm not doing it? That's a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of your mind. So we want to use the mind for all of its capabilities around what we believe is possible, around why we choose certain foods, and we really want to get to know it and to leverage it. So the first way to start understanding your mind is knowing what is its primary role and job. Well, the mind can do so many different things, but really the core job that it has is to assess information. It'll take information from what happened in the past and predict the future in order to keep you safe. So it's constantly what happened in the past, analyzing it. Did that go well? Were we okay? How do we prevent this in the future? Let's predict this in the future. So it's really like a big storehouse of information. This is really important to know this job, because what the mind predicts might not always be true. So if you have failed many times with dieting, you've struggled with dieting many times in the past, your mind might take that information and say, she failed this time, he failed this time, he failed this time. We're probably going to fail again. That's what I would predict. So the mind is analyzing, it's like the risk assessment. They're probably going to fail again, and that might be a risk. It might be a risk to our ego, to what our own feelings, and so that prediction might make you apprehensive of like, I don't even know if I want to try something new. I don't even know if I want to even work towards my goals, because my prediction is I'm probably just going to fail. So that is knowing that that's the mind's job can help open up new possibility, because if you don't have awareness that that's the mind's job, then you're always believing that that risk assessment is truth, that will happen. And the truth is that any new possibility can happen. You might decide, okay, if I'm going to actually try to work towards my goals again, I might want to try something different, because maybe I tried Weight Watchers 4 times and every time I eventually went off of it, or I tried this thing and it only lasted for 30 days. So I might want to be more strategic, and I might want to try a different method, something that works differently for me. But at the same time, when you're making that prediction in the future, or you're deciding to do something different, you want to open up the truth, which is that any possibility could happen. So by knowing, okay, my mind's job is to just take information from the past, predict the future, and to try to really keep me safe. The mind is like, I want to protect you. I want to make sure that survival is our number one thing. So it's constantly scanning your external environment, your internal environment, and alerting you if there's a significant change that's happening, and to try to keep you the same. Because really, even though we can have goals and we can have motivation, and our logical mind can say that change is good for us, the primary role is survival. And this just comes back to like the very beginning of time, of when our brains needed to prioritize survival. So what does that mean? Well, if we start a diet and we begin dieting too fast, or we begin changing our health too fast, like us humans we normally do, right? We get really excited. We get that sheet of paper and we're like, I am doing it this time. I'm going to do this health program. I'm never looking back. And so we wake up on Monday morning at 8 a.m. We start exercising. We're changing all of our foods. We're never eating it again. our body's internal chemistry starts changing because we actually changed the makeup of calories, nutrients. Maybe our body starts actually breaking down fatty acids and losing weight. Now all of a sudden we're going to that spin class or something, or we're like exercising, and the body's chemistry shifts drastically. And the brain is like, whoa, there is a drastic change that's happening right now. We just went from like an abundance of calories to a calorie deficit. The levels of carbohydrates are not the same. Everything is really fluctuating. That's going to alert some signals in the brain to say there's a massive change. And your brain doesn't know the difference if you are trying to achieve health goals or if you're going into famine and you no longer have food. So the signal is still really the same to your brain. So your brain might sound off this alarm and say, this human is changing. We need to get it back into homeostasis. And homeostasis means to keep everything the same. That's the body's job, is safety. So it's going to start shifting your chemistry. That's when you start noticing maybe appetite starts to increase, like along the time when you start dieting. But you'll also have certain thoughts that try to convince you to go back to what is comfortable and what is known. So around this time, when people start making changes, they start all of a sudden having thoughts like, maybe it wouldn't be a big deal if I just had one of those cookies, or maybe it wouldn't be a big deal. And it's not that one cookie is a big deal. That's not the big deal. But the big deal is that voice in your head wants you to go back to the path of least resistance, to resume that homeostasis, to bring everything to the same. So it's not that that the choice is right or wrong. It's not about not having the cookie, but it's having awareness of how is your mind working and how does it really want you to stay the same. So you might bring some awareness to those thoughts and ask, wait a second, is this a choice that I want to make? Does this feel in alignment with my goals? Is it true that, that this would be a good choice for me? Or sometimes we can start hearing thoughts like, you had a hard day, you deserve it. Or, you'll start hearing this voice that is talking to you, that's convincing you to have different food choices. And this was a really big awareness for me when I started to get to know the voice in my mind. Many years ago, probably about 12 years ago, I read Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul. And I love this quote that he says by The Untethered Soul. He said, there's nothing more important to true growth than realizing that you are not the voice in your mind. You are the one who hears it. And that was the first time that I created separation from the voice in my mind. And I was like, wait a second, I am not this internal voice. It's not always true. And I started to create this separation and ask myself, wait a second, do I want to believe this voice that's here that's telling me what food choices I should make? So for example, I'll never forget that one of my patterns was I would go to the grocery store and I would always convince myself when I was at the grocery store, oh, you should just have these snacks. You should buy all of these snacks. And then when I would leave the grocery store, I would put them in the car next to me, or in the seat next to me, in the passenger seat. And I would convince myself, oh, you'll just have a few snacks while you drive home. The truth is it was a really great moment for me to convince myself I was just going to have a few snacks, but it really became a mindless moment of where I could just check out and just eat as many snacks as I wanted to. And then I'd get home and I'd be like, oh shoot, what the heck happened? And then it came with a lot of like self-judgment. And then I would be like, oh my gosh, now you ate more than what your body needed. Now you need to go exercise, but I don't have time to exercise, and I need to exercise and I'm full. And it was like this very stressful scenario that happened. And when I would rewind and get to know the voice in my mind, I would start listening to that voice and how it was playing a role in that moment. So then I started to go grocery shopping and I would start to listen to, at what point was that voice in my mind trying to convince me to go into the same pattern? And I would start to hear that voice in my mind say, oh, buy all your favorite snacks. And I would start to say like, okay, one, do I want to buy all those snacks? If the answer is yes, I would maybe buy them. And then as soon as I was walking out of the grocery store, I'd hear that same familiar voice. Oh, you'll just have a few snacks. And this was an intervention moment. By having awareness of this mind and the thoughts that were in my mind, I could pause and work with it and talk to my mind almost as if it was another person. Not that the voice was truly me, but I was just the person who was hearing it, like Michael Singer says. And I would start to say, wait a minute now, Gina. I know you. You always say this, you always do this. This is a pattern that repeats. I'd love to believe you, but I actually don't think that this is the most helpful thing for me right now. And so I started to get curious with that voice, and then I would challenge myself to listen to it, to talk to it, and then put my groceries in the trunk of my car. Over time, as I worked with this voice, it completely broke the pattern. It's just not a pattern for me anymore. I don't even think about snacking now when I drive. It just isn't a thing. I don't even think about it. And so it took some time, it took some awareness, but I really needed to communicate with that voice. So one of the most helpful things that we can do when it comes to our health is to start noticing, how is my mind working? How does it speak to me? What does that voice sound like? And the voice in our head typically sounds like concrete language. It might actually talk to us in like thoughts or language or words, where in future series, we're going to go into what does the language of the body sound like? What does the language of craving sound like? What does all the different types of communication sound like, feel like, look like? And so you might notice that thought is very concrete. You can actually talk to it almost like a person. So one of the most powerful things you could begin doing, if anything else, is just to have awareness of that voice. Start creating separation. Maybe don't always believe everything that it says to you. Begin questioning it, asking it, wait a second, is this really true? Especially when that voice comes up and it's full of judgment, or it might convince you that you deserve something, or that you should, like some of the voices are a little bit not always true and not always helpful either. So begin having awareness, if you haven't yet, of that voice all throughout the day. Sounds a little bit crazy, but I have found it to be super helpful. And a lot of my students have too, where they would start saying, oh, I noticed that the voice in my head was like, oh, have this food because, and the because is always maybe a different reason other than they just want it, or it feels really in alignment with themselves or their goals. There's like a different weird reason. You deserve it, or because everyone else is doing it, or because it would be fun. And it's not that those reasons are bad, but we can really question like, wait, but do I actually really even want this food? Does it feel nourishing to me? So if you can start by observing and working with that voice, it's going to get you 90% of the way there with working with your mind. So there's two aspects of the mind that I want to talk about working with, and that's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And these are two different areas of the mind or the brain that work a little bit differently. And in the diet culture, diet industry, health industry, it uses the conscious mind, which is what you're aware of. It's where our logic is. It's where we have information. It's typically in the cortex, specifically the prefrontal cortex of the mind, because that's what stores a lot of like our logic, our information. And the conscious mind is only a small piece of what influences our behavior. The percentage of how much it influences our behavior is a little bit debated. Some have said that the conscious mind drives 5% of our behaviors, where the subconscious mind drives about 95%. I don't know if there's specific data or proof on that. I think it's a little bit debated, but I think it's very interesting because the health industry uses the conscious mind of like, what should I eat based on information? And I do think that that's only one small component of why we do what we do. However, I do think it's still really helpful. We can use our conscious mind. The conscious mind is like, what am I aware of? What do I know? And if you think about the mind being like an iceberg, the conscious mind is like the top. It's like the tip of the iceberg, where the subconscious mind is the bottom. It houses so much more and drives a lot of our behaviors as well. So how can you use the conscious mind to your advantage? Well, you can start being aware. Use your awareness. That's, what do I know? Use that conscious mind to your advantage. Can I create more awareness of, one, what are my personal patterns, my behaviors? What are the things that I want to change? Can I turn up the volume on that awareness and start critically thinking about what is the best thing for me? Am I doing things that set me up for failure? Am I making it very difficult to go to the gym because there are so many steps in between me and the gym that I need to make it easier? We can start using our rational thinking. What would be the best thing for me? We can also learn about nutrition and health and information. And so when we go to make a food choice, we can start asking, based on what I know up to this point, what would be the best decision for me and for my body right now? And so that's kind of how we can use the conscious mind and leverage that storehouse of information. The other aspect of the mind is the subconscious mind. And so that is like what's beneath the surface of what we can't see. So it's also maybe known as the unconscious mind, or it's what we're not aware of, not conscious of. Think of conscious as like, this is what I'm aware of. Subconscious is like, this is what I'm not really aware of. And this can be used as protection. It can be used as a deeper storage of our memories, of our feelings. Think of the subconscious mind as like this infinite database, this huge storage of a collection of memories all the way from birth that might be out of our awareness. It could be even possibly prior to birth. Don't really know, but it's this really deep storage of our memories, of our feelings, of our experiences. And it's estimated that the subconscious mind can be a significant driver of our behaviors. But because it's not so much in our awareness, it can create that effect of like, why do I know so much about health, but yet I'm choosing something different? And it can feel like a tug of war. And so that's the interplay between the conscious mind that knows so much about health, but the subconscious mind that has really deep, deep influences on why we do what we do based on memory, feelings, emotions. The book, Why Buddhism is True by Robert Wright, he explains that in the subconscious mind is the default mode network. And this is where we have many of our decision making happening out of our awareness. There's constantly decisions floating and flying around through the default mode network. So if you are deciding, should I eat the cookie or should I not eat the cookie, this decision, all the different decisions and outcomes are going through the default mode network in your mind. And so he talks about, well, what propels the decision forward of like, I'm going to eat the cookie into your conscious mind, into your awareness? And he says that researchers believe that it's the one that has the most emotion behind it. So if you have a strong emotion that is propelling forward that decision of like, I need the cookie because I'm feeling this strong emotion of sadness, or I'm feeling this, whatever the strongest emotion is attached to the decision will propel it forward into your conscious mind and influence your decision making. Why is this important? Well, most of us were not taught that our emotions influence our food choices. And so if we're constantly suppressing our emotions, we're not aware of our emotions, we might have no awareness that what is really propelling our decision making forward is the strongest emotion that's present. When we can understand that emotion, work with that emotion, feel what needs are needing to be met, we can be more in charge of our decision making and why we do what we do. So this is where emotional awareness is so important in order to be able to work with your subconscious mind and understand your own behaviors. And because the subconscious mind is a storage of many memories, we can start to understand, why do we do what we do based on our past? And this is, again, another downfall of the diet industry and the health industry, is that it's meeting you in every single present moment. But the truth is it's not so much the present moment that's driving your behaviors. It's actually what you learned in the past when you were growing up and your brain was forming and developing connections and learning, how do I interact with my food, with the world, with everything else. Your brain is learning that manual of how things work when you're younger. And then the pattern continues to repeat itself into adulthood. But because we don't know this, the health industry is like, just have willpower now. And so you believe that it's a now thing. But we need to go back and understand, what were the storage forms of memory or things that we learn that's influencing our eating behaviors. So a really good example of this is, let's take somebody who struggles with overeating as an adult. Man, it's one of the most common things. We might just have this inherent drive to overeat and not really understand why. And so as one example, maybe in childhood, you didn't have enough food at home, or maybe even you had enough food, but all of your siblings were fighting over food, or you were really rushed for time and you had to eat and get as much food as you could. I have had many students who have said we didn't have enough food growing up. And so I learned that there's not enough food. And so I would overeat, and that overeating became a coping mechanism when you were younger, which is a beautiful strategy to be able to deal with a really difficult experience. Every child needs to have adequate food. And so if the nervous system and the brain is like, oh my gosh, there's not enough food for me, I might not survive, because that's what the brain is doing, is it's analyzing, do I have enough food? Then you learn as a coping strategy to overeat. And then that coping strategy gets repeated again and again and again and again until it becomes a habit. And then as an adult, that strategy turns into a behavior or habit. And then you might wonder, why do I always feel this internal need to overeat? And you might not have awareness of it because in your subconscious mind, it stored this younger memory and this younger programming that food is scarce. And so then as an adult, you're using your conscious mind, which is what you are aware of, that you're like, ooh, my health isn't good. My health needs to be better. So I need to eat less food. But your subconscious mind has a conflict with that because your subconscious mind has stored this memory that there's not enough food. But your conscious mind, what you're aware of is, I want to lose weight and be healthier. So now there's an inner conflict. So then when you try to remove the food or you try to cut back your portions, you eat less food, now your subconscious mind is like, oh my gosh, we're going into scarcity. There's not enough food. And the subconscious protection will be a stronger influence on your behaviors than your desire or your motivation or your willpower to lose weight. So the subconscious mind that holds these memories of your childhood will drive you to self-sabotage and overeat. But then your conscious mind will be like, why do I always do that? Why don't I have more willpower and discipline? So the person who has the conscious desire of, I want to lose weight, but the subconscious memory of, I don't have enough food, food is scarce, this one will be stronger. They will almost always self-sabotage, and they will wonder, what is wrong with me? Am I broken? And this is the interplay between the conscious and the subconscious mind that creates that inner resistance. Now, if this person does the deeper than dieting self-exploration, they start learning and listening to themselves. So like what I would have them do is to start getting curious. When you have that moment of overeating, what does it feel like in your body when you think about eating a normal portion size that your body needs or taking away food? And often they'll say, gosh, it feels like fear. And then we'll go into that fear and start getting curious with, where does that come from? Where does that fear come from? They often will say, oh my gosh, it actually feels like when I was a child, and we can work with that fear. The beautiful part is you can update your subconscious mind, your psyche. You can update your belief systems around food and your experiences so that now the brain can be met with present day reality and say, wait a second, I'm not in that same situation anymore. I have access to enough food. I'm able to get food, and the nervous system can calm down. And then you're able to move forward with working on your health goals, not being in a place of, oh my gosh, I won't have enough food. The nervous system can feel safe as the body is making some changes. So that's an example of how do we start to explore what's happening in the subconscious mind. So if you want to begin exploring, this is a deeper one. I spend quite a bit of time with my students exploring the subconscious mind, but where you want to begin asking questions with this is, what were my experiences growing up? And sometimes this has to be done slowly or maybe even with support from a practitioner, because I know memories related to ourselves, our bodies, our food can bring up traumas and difficult memories. And so this might be something that you need support with along the way, or you have to go at your own pace. But if you feel comfortable asking deeper questions, you might start to ask, what are experiences that created beliefs about food, about myself? Did I feel that I knew how to love my body? Did I have examples of that? Is there something that needs to be changed and updated? So we can begin exploring, what is this storage form of memory in my mind that I grew up with that might need some updating? Because I might believe that these things are true, but they might not be true anymore. And so if we had the belief that, maybe you saw your parents self-sacrifice and they didn't take care of themselves, or they didn't put themselves first, and watching and observing that might create this belief system of taking care of yourself is selfish, or you don't deserve to take the time to take care of yourself. If you didn't have a parent who encouraged that you deserve to create the space to take care of yourself, and you either had to achieve instead, or be productive, or work, or take care of others, take care of children, then it might actually feel deeply triggering in you when you do go to take care of yourself, because there's also this deeper subconscious story or belief that says, you don't deserve this, or this is selfish. And that's not a truth. That's purely a belief that will keep you and hold you back, and keep you from being able to take care of yourself, and keep you from a deeper place of fulfillment. Because taking care of ourselves, nurturing ourselves, is a deep core piece of fulfillment that we all need to have. And so self-sacrifice will never lead to deep, nourishing fulfillment for ourselves, and that will influence the relationship with other people around us in our families. So in order to explore the subconscious mind and the deeper things we want to start experiencing and exploring, what are the feelings that are coming up for me around my food or when I go to change? And if I could trace back, where did I learn these things? What kind of memories come up around health, my body, loving myself, taking care of myself? We can find the roots and we can begin updating that programming. So that's how we can start to observe our thoughts, be aware and leverage our conscious mind, which is nutrition, health information, things that we have awareness of. The subconscious mind, which is more deeper feelings, memories, how is that playing a role? And the last piece I want to touch on is our identity. Our mind stores our identity, what we believe to be is true about ourselves. And we can form an identity based on our experiences, and that kind of builds a case for our identity and who we believe that we are. And this is really important because when we start changing and evolving, our identity must evolve with us. So we often change our behaviors, but don't realize that there's an identity of what we believe to be true about ourselves that needs to be ahead of the game. And I realized that when I read Maxwell Maltz's book, Psycho-Cybernetics, that he says, the mental image of yourself is the strongest force within you. And I realized this because when I was trying to change my behaviors, I was really stuck in a lot of self-judgment around, you're a dietitian, you should know all this information, you're struggling, you can't do this, what's wrong with you? And it was forming this identity of you can't do it. And my behaviors were following behaviors of struggle. And every day I was like aligning with this identity of struggle. When I read his book, I realized, what if I didn't focus so much on the behaviors and I focused more on shifting my identity instead? And I started to tell and believe in myself that I am learning, I'm building confidence, I am mastering the relationship with myself, I am mastering mindfulness. And it wasn't a lie that I am at a mastery level, but I started to shift the identity from I'm a person who struggles to I am a person who is focused and I'm learning and I'm dedicated and I'm committed. And it completely shifted. I'm a person who takes care of themselves. I am a person who loves themselves. And when I started shifting this identity, I noticed that my behaviors started to naturally follow, and I felt like it gave me a lot more momentum. And so the other thing Maxwell Maltz says is a human being will always act in accordance to what he believes is true about himself. So if you want to act differently, it's not about forcing yourself to do a bunch of things that aren't what you believe is true about yourself. It's to shift what you believe about yourself, and then your behaviors will follow in accordance to that. So if you believe that I'm just someone who fails, I'm just someone who struggles, you're putting your stake in that identity, you're building a moat around it. I am this person, I struggle, I always fail, and you're building a strong identity in case for that to be true. And a human being will always act in accordance to what he believes is true about himself. So your behaviors continue to follow and continue to follow. If we can shift from I'm learning, I'm committed to myself, I am growing, I love taking care of myself, and we build that new identity around it, that opens the door for so much more rhythm and so much more momentum and so much more to happen. You can just feel the energy that opens and closes when you shift from an identity perspective. So if you're evolving your behaviors, but you're holding on to an old identity of I'm someone who struggles, I'm someone who doesn't commit to anything, I'm someone who doesn't show up, I'm someone who doesn't love themselves, and you're just locking in that identity, it's not going to match the new behaviors of what you really desire. So if you know what it is that you desire and you shift to who is the person who would be embodying these behaviors, that creates the momentum. And that creates the ability to start changing our behaviors from a different perspective. So there are many different ways that we can work with the mind, but I have found that when we are aware of how to work with these different parts of the mind, it puts us in the driver's seat. We're in the controllers now of how do I want to use and leverage my thoughts to help me and to support me, so that it's like I'm rolling with the rock down the hill instead of pushing it because I'm against my own belief systems of you can't do it, you always mess up, and oh, just have the cookie because you deserve it. And that's just like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. You're pushing a rock uphill to try to change your behaviors. So the mind can be one of your most powerful tools. It can be one of the biggest things that holds you back. This is a really big one to explore and to learn how to work with. It's one of the deepest topics that we've really focused on them in the Mastering Mindfulness Institute. So just as a summary of how can you work with your mind, one, understand how it functions, that it provides safety, that you can become aware of your thoughts so that you can see how it's playing a role in your behaviors. Use your conscious mind, leverage that to build your skills and your knowledge around health to make informed, conscious choices. Start exploring your subconscious mind by welcoming feelings, memories, a deeper relationship with your food, understanding yourself, how that relationship was formed, and then questioning your identity. Are you allowing your identity to evolve with you? Does it need to be updated and upgraded? So I hope you found this helpful. One of the most important things to me is just to know, was there something that gave you an aha? I would love to talk with you, connect with you here. Let me know if something was impactful for you today. I would love to hear it, or if you'd like to give it some love. And I'll see you in part 3, which will go all into the body. How do we work with this body, understand it? So definitely feel free to subscribe if you want to be notified on when the next series or the next episode is going to be coming out. And I'll see you next time.